Matt Damon told you about this true story, and then you said you didn't want to know anything more about the story. You wanted to tell your own story. I was curious, was it the themes of that story that Matt Damon mentioned to you that made you interested in making this movie? What kind of drew you once Matt told you that true story?
Yeah, it was New York. I think probably 2000 or something like that. I was living in New York, and we were out to dinner with Casey and Matt. And Matt had a new little company, and he wanted to make some things, and he had this story, which was a Boston, sort of local Boston story, about kids that had never been in the wilderness and sort of got lost. And it was a small article that was, 3 inches long, so it really wasn't a story. So we had to make it up.
And also my understanding is that part of the inspiration for you is also that you had gotten lost in the wilderness. Do I understand this correctly? That you were also sort of drawing from your own experience of sort of...
a few times I got lost in different wildernesses for short periods of time.
In terms of because the level of panic that can happen in those moments, was it ever scary in terms of those moments? Like, what was it like?
Well, I think one of the times I got lost is just skiing the wrong way on a ski slope, and you end up in a ravine, and it's like hard to find your way out. So panic ensues, and I don't know if we really tried to capture so much of that. I mean, it was sort of something to be read onto the characters from the audience's point of view. But I think the original two people one had killed the other, and so there was a question of like what happened and why. And I think when later on there was a book that came out about these two characters, and it was supposedly it was possible that it was over a girl that they both knew, and which sort of made it different than our film. And also they were sort of trapped in a hole that they had hiked down into and couldn't find the way back out. So that was also quite different than what we imagined had happened.
So going from that sort of initial kernel to you and Matt and Casey working on this script together, was it a script? Was it sort of an extended sort of outline? How much did you guys have before you went out to start shooting this?
Yeah, well, I guess one of the ideas was to see if we could make something with no script. And Matt and Casey were improvising ideas in our first meetings, and I was writing down the improvisations and making them into an order of sorts. And then when we reached when we chose the location and went to the location, we tried to kind of recall those improvs. And a lot of things sort of happened. I imagined that the characters would talk a lot, and while we were doing it, they sort of weren't talking in the same way that I had imagined. Like I wanted to sort of be like a John Cassavetes movie, and I wasn't really getting them, or they weren't getting into this area that I thought they would get in, because ordinarily they would just be talking all day long, and so I started to like change the style of the film from the Cassavetes style into Bela Tarr, who was the only filmmaker I could imagine that what was going on in the desert between us, that it might fit like as a stylistic idea.
And also my understanding is that kind of like early on, like one of the initial ideas was like they were all sort of like a Beavis and Butthead duo, like they were more sort of comedic than how it ended up. Was that also something where you had an idea and then as it developed you realized that's not where these two actors wanted to go with their characters?
Yeah, that's part of the legend, was that we got there and they were making me laugh usually, always. And I said, just do it like you guys would normally be talking. And they were like, no, we don't want to be like that. And I was like, well, why not? And they said, well, we'll just look like idiots. So we couldn't, it was hard for us to figure out who they were as characters. And they thought they should be people that are smarter than they were. And I wondered if we could improv that. So I think they started to just play me. Turned it on me.
Play you in terms of just, because one of the things I think is really remarkable about the film is that we don't learn backstories. We don't learn who these guys are, and it seems obviously very intentional. And so I was so curious for the two of them in terms of playing these characters. It's not like they're playing themselves exactly, but it really is just like a pure, almost like star essence in terms of these two guys. Was there conversation about who the two guys were in the improvisations, or sort of understanding them, or was it just the idea of you wanted them to be in some ways kind of blank?
Yeah, I think they just evolved into the kind of blank characters, although they are quite funny. I mean, there's a lot of funny bits in there. And there also was this idea that the dialogue between them wasn't meant to convey anything. It was meant to be sort of part of the landscape. It wasn't meant to guide you in a direction. The only direction was sort of the way they were walking, and it was apparent from their reactions that they weren't getting where they wanted to get.
Yeah, because I want to ask about the opening, because the opening is just so gorgeous, and the Arvo part score, is that something that you sort of knew from the beginning that you wanted to happen at the opening? Did you cut the opening to the music? How did that come together?
We had landed in Buenos Aires at first. It was shot in Buenos Aires, or in Argentina, in the country, the northern part of the country, and Death Valley. We had left the U.S. because there was an actors' strike, and we couldn't shoot here unless we left the country. And so we went down there. While we were shooting down there, the actors' strike was resolved, and we were able to come back. And it was getting cold where we were in Argentina, even though the shoot was only about 20 days or so. But while we were driving from Buenos Aires into the country, which took about a day, Casey and Matt had both brought recordings that we were playing in the car, and Arvo part was one of them. So I just chose to use that. Sort of, it seemed to be a theme, sort of.
A theme in terms of, because for me watching the film, it feels like there's this ominous sort of melancholy thing from the beginning, probably because of that music. Probably because of the way that they're driving, the kind of almost the expressionless way that they are driving, almost as if that their fates are almost sort of sealed from the beginning. I don't know if I'm reading too much into that, but that's...
No, I mean, I think, mood-wise, I think that's at the time. As the recording did, as we were driving into the desert.
Because I was also wondering, in terms of just the outline and the improvisation, did you know the ending? Did the three of you know where it was going to go from the beginning, or was that something that you found along the way?
Well, I mean, there was always the original story, which was two guys went in, one killed the other, and one was found his way out. So that was sort of the guidepost. But yeah, we could have done anything. I think along the way we were supposing that we could, have sort of done anything we wanted. So there wasn't a strict ending.
In terms of, one of the great sequences in the movie, of course, is when Casey Affleck is up there on that ledge, and he's going to jump, and Matt Damon's trying to do it. That's one take of how did that?
Yeah.
Because it's a I rewatched it again this week to prepare for this, and it's just one of the most perilous things I've seen in terms of just you think he's going to break his ankle. So I'm just so curious how that came together.
Yeah, we found we were also because of that one improv that they had done earlier. That Casey was stuck on a rock, and Matt's character was trying to figure out how he got up there and how to get down. And so we needed a rock that was appropriate, and it took a long time. We were scouting in Death Valley for a couple of weeks, and we finally found this kind of great rock. And when we got up there, I think we lugged a crane up by the rock, and we were planning to do a very elaborate move with it, except I think it was also 120 degrees. It was July in Death Valley. And so Harris, the DP, just signaled like that, looking at the rock, and it was like, what, just from one angle? And he was like, yeah. As he would do. And it was looking more and more inviting because it was so hot. I just thought, yeah, the crane is going to be impossible. And so we just did it like that, hoping that it would work.
And was there anything like in addition to help Casey in terms of if he falls
When he
apart,
jumps.
in terms of when he jumps? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, it's a special effect.
Another great sequence is when the two of them were walking, and it's kind of near the end. Matt Damon's in the background, and Casey's in the foreground, and it's not even score. I think it's like something that you all put together, like that sort of music concrete that you put together, and it feels like they're walking like on the moon or another planet. I'm really curious about in terms of constructing the sound design specifically for that scene.
Yeah, I think we sort of used this kind of like looped sound that Leslie Schatz was making instead of music concrete, which we both knew about, but we didn't use yet. I think the next film, Elephant, we were using music concrete a lot. So we just didn't have that idea. We didn't think of using that. But we were sort of attracted to loops in video games. And it's kind of a copy of, or it's a simulation of a loop from I think Tomb Raider. At least one of them is. So we sometimes use these loops as kind of a sound.
You mentioned Harris, your cinematographer. The two of you worked together several times over your career. In terms of what he sort of brought to this film, you mentioned just one shot for that sequence. I'm curious in terms of that collaboration with Harris, in terms of figuring out sort of the visual look of what this film. Because one of the things that also I think is so impressive about the film is that you have your actors so often so tiny on the screen, they're so enveloped by the environment. The conversations that you and Harris had in terms of framing and shooting this film.
Yeah, Harris Savides was, he's gone now, but he was a great collaborator for a number of films. He did Milk, we did Finding Forrester together, and Elephant and Last Days. And since I was starting to kind of cite Bela Tarr's Satan Tango as an inspiration, Harris had never seen it, and I couldn't locate a copy of it. So we did find a copy of Chantal Ackerman's Jean Dielman, which had a similar quality about it, which we really later used as a guide to Last Days. But it was the thing that I showed Harris and Casey as a kind of reference to like the pacing, I guess. Yeah, we just it was widescreen. It was he was sort of the master of color and light for me, and we were trying to emulate something that he hadn't seen, and I was only able to like describe it.
And I just think the idea of having stars play these roles and to have them be so minimalist in terms of their performances, was it easy for them to sort of downshift into something that was so minimalist, or did it sort of take them a while, or did the improv sort of begin the process of helping them sort of understand how kind of small in certain ways to make
I think well, Casey had seen Jean Dielman, and Matt, I think, just picked it up. He understood, like, the very first thing he does is he leaves a can of soda or something in the car, and he kind of goes back and picks it up, and that was sort of his idea, and he kind of like fell into it very quickly. The naturalism and the slow pace of the film.
I'd love to open up to the audience if people have questions. Yes, right here.
So, I was curious about the relationship between like Jerry and like video games, because I think I remember like something that really intrigued me after seeing Jerry and seeing interview was how you discussed the camera and like the whole aspect of point A to point B in video games and how that relates to the movement of Jerry. And kind of relationship in your shows like in Elephant where you have like a Jerry video game playing. So I was curious about the relationship, how the relationship has evolved with it for Jerry specifically.
I think because I was playing Tomb Raider as a way to research Columbine and Elephant, which was sort of supposed to happen before Jerry. They were out of order, those three films. And so I think the shots were, they were following these characters, and it looked a little bit like a video game, and it was inspired by a video game, and yet it didn't really have the story behind it. It didn't have the object that a video game would have. It was just an endless movement in the wrong direction.
Yes, right there.
So when the film first came out theatrically, I was living in Japan at the time. I only got the chance to see it on DVD because I missed it theatrically. And now, seeing it on the big screen, I know something that I didn't notice the first time around. Since Tim asked all the important questions, I'm going to ask you a little silly question, but it'll bug me for the rest of my life if I don't. In the I'm leaving scene, right before Matt strangles Casey, a fly perches on his teeth, and it sits there for a good chunk of the scene. And I was just curious whether that's something you noticed during production and how he managed to stay in character throughout that.
Gee, I don't remember. I haven't noticed that. Maybe
It's there.
Maybe when we shot it, or maybe when I was first screening it. But yeah, he probably knew that it was there, and he probably thought it was really cool. Probably wanted it to stay there.
Yes, right there.
Yeah, was this a fun movie to make? Like, would you said they were always like making you laugh and stuff. Would you guys rap at the end of the day? Was it gloomy, or were you like having fun?
Well, it was really strenuous, and the desert was so hot, and it was like a workout, and we were hiking everywhere, so it was a workout, and it was hot, so you were really your body was really working, and your whatever systems were exuding like liquids. You're drinking all day, and you're sweating all day. That we could go and have a bunch of drinks at the bar at the Furnace Creek Inn in Death Valley, and it wouldn't have any effect. I mean, we would get drunk, but not hungover. It was very, I mean, we had fun. We had a lot of arguments on the way. I think in the beginning it was really, really fun conceiving of it, but then the realities became hard when we were in Argentina, it just got too cold for the actors to speak. So, we looked for another location, and everyone flew home to the States, and my producer and I flew to Jordan because he knew people in Jordan, the country of Jordan, that could help us, and it could, be affordable to go over there. And that's where Wadi Rum is, where they shot Lawrence of Arabia. So we thought, and we were watching movies on DVDs in our hotel rooms or our cabins, and one of them was Lawrence of Arabia. So then I think we just thought, let's go there. And as soon as we got there, there was the first terrorist convictions in Amman, Jordan, and there was like a travel alert, and we couldn't convince the crew or the actors to come to Jordan, even though it seemed perfectly fine. But they wouldn't come, and so we were scouting on the internet, just looking for deserts. And by that time, the strike was over, and we could just go to Death Valley. So we went there. So it was sort of like a comedy of errors in the shoot. And there was a lot of, I think Matt continually wanted to just stop the production and just, eat the cost and just completely stop. So a lot of times, I would want to stop, and then the other two would convince me to keep going. Because if we were conceiving it over a couple of years, and during the period of time they were shooting in Las Vegas together, Ocean's 11, and sometimes Casey would want to stop, and Matt and I would convince him to keep going. So there was that kind of stuff going on.
Yes, right there.
Hi, I have a question about the editing. Because the movie is very physical, but it's also very cerebral, and the editing helps because it cuts to a scene that lost in a totally different environment as the previous scene. Did you conceive of a moment where the movie takes a turn and that's it, they're lost almost forever? Early in the movie, is it like a circular movement where around Casey after they've run? Or would it be like a cut after they've wondered where they're going and then that's it? In terms, the way you conceive the editing, that's it, they're lost forever.
I'm not sure.
So, it's sometimes in movies just one cut or one movement, camera movement, signifies a turn in the movie. And if the turn would be they're lost, they're not going to find their way back. Could you identify a camera movement or a cut early on in the movie that would?
That explains that.
Yeah.
I think it was just a slow, descension into hopeless, mistakes that it wasn't one cut that said, okay, now they're not going to make it. I guess it could be the circular,
Yeah.
Move around Casey, because that seemed pretty interesting. But it was supposed to sort of slowly move in one direction,
Yeah.
and get further and further from an area that you might recognize. And I've had a lot of people sort of not really connect with the film because they would say things like, why don't they just get water, it seems easy, but if you've been disoriented in nature and confused, it's sort of what I was trying to capture.
Yes, right there in the hat.
So I was wondering, does that happen to you after, for me, the description of true cinema is leave something and then seeing it in years later and just seeing another thing that you haven't seen before, and instead revisiting something because of the minimalistic and poetic meditation shots. Do you see that later in the years I guess that's what I was looking for, or a new perspective on something? And because for me, I'm from the desert, I'm from Middle East, and I'm man, I had moments of despair and I'm just finding my own interpretation in that, and I let go of the story per se and just connected on it on a meditative piece. Do you get that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the what we were making was something that it was kind of a meditative piece on their perspective, the character's perspective, but also the audience watching. It's sort of, there's so much space that your mind is going to go in a lot of different directions and then come back again and then keep going. So it's sort of encouraging that and embracing that.
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of curious, in terms of maybe the last time that you have seen the movie, has the movie changed for you over the years? It's been about 20 years in terms of the meanings or your own kind of relationship to the movie, because it is open to interpretation in certain ways. Has the film changed for you over time?
I haven't seen it in a while, so I didn't get to watch the screen today, but I couldn't say.
One thing I want to ask is, this is part of Bleak Week that the American Cinematheque does, and I'm curious for you in terms of your own feeling, not of making the movie, but what the movie is about, in terms of the overall emotional impact of the film. Do you find the story bleak? Do you find it? How would you sort of describe the emotions that come out of the experience of watching this film?
Emotionally, I think it's a happy adventure that turns dark and turns over a course of maybe 3 days, turns deadly. I don't know about bleak. There's a bleakness going on, but I don't know if it fits into it.
Because one of the things I think is true of several of the films that are programmed during this week, but also your film as well, is that there's bleakness, but there's also this incredible beauty at the same time. And I think this is true of a lot of the films that you've made. There's something that's so pure about this film. We've talked about sort of the minimalism. It also feels like you were going for a certain kind of emotional, visual purity in terms of the type of thing that you were making here. And it's true of the Death trilogy in general, but especially this film, it feels that way. I'm curious for you, were you seeking this sort of purity in the filmmaking that you were making here?
Yeah, I think shot by shot, starting with we shot in order, so pretty much the way what you're seeing is in order. It was so that we could the characters could change, and it would be just in the correct order, day by day, and I forgot the question.
In terms of seeking a certain type of purity in the filmmaking.
Yeah, I think that was one of the ideas. I think each shot suggested the next one, and we had a list of things that we wanted to do, and then new environments. There was a couple of weeks of scouting where I did another time that I got lost was by the Throne of Pinnacles, and I had a flat tire and got out of the car, and it seemed like the road was pretty close, so I just hiked to the road, and it was only halfway there I was losing sort of my dizzy. There was a lot of dizziness, and I didn't think I was going to make it. And a car pulled in and was coming my direction to go visit the Throne of Pinnacles. It's probably a 5-mile walk, but it was so hot, and I had water, but it didn't seem to help. And the guy, I kind of waved him down, and he stopped, and he rolled down the window, and I said, "Can you give me a ride? I think I'm dying." And I was ready to, if he had done anything that indicated he wasn't going to let me get in the car, I was going to dive at the keys and grab and commandeer the car, because I was dying. And so he said, okay, except he wanted to go see the Pinnacles, so we back to the Pinnacles. around, and he drove me to a motel, and I gave him my camera for saving my life.
That seems like a fair trade-off. Gus, thank you so much for being here tonight.